I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up with a head. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25, 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, Bucs fans, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Rick Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish. Today we are back to catch you up on the latest Tampa Bay Buccaneer news and headlines. Today we are covering all things Cutdown Day. Today at noon Eastern Standard Time, all NFL teams had to get their rosters down to 53 players, and the Buccaneers have done just that. Some surprises, some moves that are not so surprising, and some news outside the realm of Cutdown Day, I think that is going to get people excited for the start of the regular season. We are under 2 weeks away from the official return of Buccaneers football. Before we dive into all of it, Evan, my friend, how are you?
We are, now everything's out of the way, right? And, the preseason training camp, you know what the roster is going to be. So I'm doing pretty good. We're recording this Wednesday night, August 27th. So tomorrow, 1 week from tomorrow, is the NFL opening night. It's the Cowboys and the Eagles. So real football is almost upon us. We are down the final stretch here. And before you know it, the Buccaneers are going to be playing, in Atlanta, and things are going to count for real, So, it's definitely an exciting time for sure.
Shout out to all of our people in the live chat on YouTube tonight joining us. Our good buddy MK checking in. It's Ed and Richard T from the West Coast. You always gotta add the phone delay for dramatic effect. I think it's just because, again, he's all the way over there on the
Yep. Hey, we'll probably be hearing that soon again too.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be opening things back up and getting back into our regularly scheduled program with our live post-game call-in shows. Very excited for those to return. Going to have some cool stuff up our sleeves for the upcoming season. But let's get down to business. Before we dive into the final 53-man roster, there were a couple of moves that were announced, and I think it raised a lot of eyebrows, and it's honestly a good step in the right direction, but people are also saying it is largely procedural. It was announced that Tristan Wirfs and Chris Godwin, who are still expected to miss the start of the season with injury, passed their physical and were activated off of the PUP list, which again is great news for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Todd Bowles even spoke to the media just this week and said that, an updated time frame for Chris Godwin right now is between 2 to 5 weeks into the season. So, if you were to give me worst case scenario, we get Chris Godwin back week 5, I think most people are perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, I think that's, I think a lot of people sort of expected it in that, 4 or 5, but there was some that maybe we're a little bit concerned because, at the end of the day, the reality is he hasn't practiced, right? Like, he hasn't practiced a single thing. He hasn't even run, like, in shorts and a t-shirt, right? Like, it's not like he's been on the other practice field running and doing jogging and, just not playing with pads. No, he hasn't even been doing that. And I think some people got a little bit concerned, and rightfully so. It is a pretty big storyline, and it's a worse offense without Chris Godwin, right? It can still be good, but they are worse off without Chris Godwin. And, you got a couple of opponents here, specifically when you're looking at, maybe that timetable. Week 4, you got the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously defending Super Bowl champions. Yes, you've handled them over the past few years, but they're still the defending Super Bowl champions for a reason. They're still very good. And maybe that's a game that Chris Godwin can come back. Now, I also don't think he's going to come back and play 90% of the snaps. I think they're going to ease him into it. But it is nice to know that, worst case, like you said, worst case scenario might be week 5. Like, and I think most Bucks fans, if you sort of, especially with how sort of things were trending in training camp, Bray just didn't practice. If you'd have told a lot of people that, I think they'd probably take that. So yeah, I mean, obviously, the fact that they both passed their physicals does not mean that either one, with obviously Godwin to, will not be ready week 1, not officially out. I mean, I think you can pretty much say Godwin is officially out, but doesn't mean either one will be ready week 1. However, it's definitely a positive sign in the right direction.
Yeah, and when you bring up those injuries impacting week 1, as we kind of forecast the roster here and look at who could be a game time decision, the only name that really sticks out aside from Chris Godwin and worse, as we just talked about, is Cade Otton. Todd Bowles had mentioned him this week as well to the media and said that he's dealing with some kind of leg injury or some nagging thing. And it may or may not be an issue is kind of the attitude, it seems like. Very lukewarm on if that's going to be a week 1 issue. But to be honest, with a lot of the injuries that we had pop up over the last couple of weeks, it's good to see that nothing is going to be seemingly too long-lasting for this Buccaneers roster. But let's get into some of the moves made. And I'm sure that if you're watching and if you have seen the thumbnail, you already know what our lead story is tonight, folks. But the Kyle Trask era in Tampa Bay is officially over. It was announced just earlier this week that the Buccaneers were going to be releasing Kyle Trask, ultimately moving on, which means that longtime veteran Teddy Bridgewater is the new QB2 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Outside of that, they did also cut down Connor Bazelak, but he will be returning on the practice squad. This quarterback room for Tampa Bay, though, outside of Baker Mayfield, going to look vastly different for the Buccaneers this season.
So I think the writing was kind of on the wall when they signed Teddy Bridgewater. However, I don't think it was a guarantee, right? I think what didn't help Kyle Trask is that Teddy Bridgewater came in and in his only action of the preseason played quite well. That certainly didn't help, and I don't think Trask played awful this preseason. Like I don't think he played terrible. He's played worse games. But I don't know if it was enough, and I feel like the Bucks' minds maybe were already made up when they signed Teddy Bridgewater. Like I feel like it was not much of a competition. Almost like, Trask, like with 2 competitions here, they signed Baker Mayfield, and it's like, oh, Mayfield versus Trask, and you're like, is it really a competition? Sort of almost get that vibe here where like, yeah, like Bridgewater came in and had to play well, but like he only played 1 preseason game. Trask played all 3, knows the system, has been in it, and you still went with Bridgewater. I don't know. Maybe they were a little bit concerned that if they tried to get cute and keep Bridgewater on the practice squad, that they weren't going to be able to, and they were like, let's just cut bait with Trask. Who knows? But yeah, it's a second round pick that was just I'm sure they had some ideas of him starting, right? My guess is that Bruce Arians, who was the head coach at the time, probably looked at Trask and said, if you give me a year or 2 with him, I think I can turn him into a serviceable NFL starting quarterback. And it just didn't happen. So, we're not going to sit here and look back on the draft pick and who they passed on and this and that. And because also, like, it kind of helps if you do look, the next 10 to 15 picks, it's nothing crazy. Like who they passed on. So I'm not gonna go back and sit there and look. I will say though, that means that every single pick of the Bucks 2021 draft class is now off the team. So really bad. I mean, that's probably up there with 2016 for lights, worst.
I was going to ask you, I know we're not going to spend a ton of time diving back into the draft class and who went where, yada, yada, yada. I think, honestly, when you look at 2021, many could argue that Robert Hainsey made out the best. He, made his money, and he's playing in Jacksonville now with a starting position. But outside of that, you said it, man. It's up there with 2016 as far as, the biggest whiffs for Jason Light. But to be honest with you, if a mediocre draft class following a Super Bowl championship is the price to pay, then I'm going to take that every single time. So,
sure. Yeah.
It is what it is. One of the things here I think that adds context to the Buccaneers QB situation, in you can argue with me if you like, I am a Florida Gators fan. I'm a Kyle Trask fan. I don't know if I'm as diehard of a Kyle Trask fan as a lot of people seem to be, but I think most people can agree that we largely do not know what you have in Kyle Trask. I don't think many NFL teams know what they have in Kyle Trask. I don't even think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have had him on their roster for the better part of 4 years, know entirely what they have in Kyle Trask. The phrase "win now" has been thrown around a lot with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and just where things lie with from the top down, their front office to the rookies that they have in place to come in here and make plays, to the age of the players that are getting up there and still have a few productive years left, but you only got a year or two left, maybe 3 with Mike Evans, and then that's one of your more productive guys on the offensive side of the ball. This is a win now window. God forbid if Baker Mayfield goes down. Evan, I'm asking you, and all of our people in the chat as well, chime in. Would you rather, given both options, put your trust with the season on the line? Let's say Baker's going to miss 5 games. Season on the line, playoff bubble team. Are you trusting Kyle Trask or Teddy Bridgewater in 2025? I know, again, Teddy's not what he used to be.
Sure.
But he's certainly a guy who has been there, done that in the realm of being a backup quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, look, longtime listeners of the show, they know how I feel about Kyle Trask. They know how I felt about the draft pick. They know how I felt about him, as a quarterback or whatever. And I'm not saying I'm like the biggest Teddy Bridgewater fan in the world either. And look, if Baker Mayfield goes down, like if it's for a significant amount of time, your season's done anyway. Like,
yeah, I mean, we're
Teddy
cooked
Bridgewater,
either way.
Kyle Trask, they're not doing it. Like, they're not going to get you where you want to go. So,
but maybe a 3-2 record or a 2-3 record can help.
Maybe, but I'm
afloat.
talking like significant time, like 6+ games. Like that's what I mean. Like 6+ weeks. Yeah, it's done. But if you need him in a pinch for a game, 2, 3, I would probably prefer Bridgewater because like he's also done that before too. He did it in New Orleans. Was I think undefeated as a starter.
Yeah, dude, he was like 5-0
that 1 year. Yeah,
5-0.
Yeah, and obviously, again, it's a couple years ago, right? That's
yeah.
We were still in the 20 teens,
yeah.
Right? We're, but and it's not the same dude, right? He was retired basically and comes back, but I would still probably prefer Teddy Bridgewater. The experience factor, the success at the NFL level. Trask, and I understand Trask has not had an opportunity as Bridgewater has, but Trask hasn't had that success, and Bridgewater has. It's not like a ton. It's not like he was a star quarterback, but he's had some success at the NFL level, and I'd rather take that gamble.
Well, and here's the thing too: is like I don't want to sit here and contradict what we just said, but another thing to keep in mind as well. In my opinion, I think what we have seen from Kyle Trask, and you can only take this sample size for what it is, because it's really all he has. Aside from maybe this many plays in regular season action, I could count on one hand. Given what he has shown us, I think Kyle Trask is, at this point in the preseason, consistently inconsistent. And if you want to talk about his performance over this preseason that we just watched these last 3 weeks, you could argue he was inconsistent. He had a really good performance. He had a not so good performance. And I know that the supporting cast is always brought into question, especially when you evaluate preseason ball. I know that that's a big part of it, and I know that it's not like he was set up for success, but I feel like every single September we talk about Kyle Trask, and it's like, yeah, I had a couple good performances. There are some areas where you'd like to see him improve, but he looks like a backup QB who we've never seen in live action.
Yeah.
So it's from a winning games perspective, I can 100% understand why there may be some second guesses about putting your trust in it, because we've had it for 4 years. And in all due respect to Kyle Trask, I hope he lands on his feet. I'm very excited to watch him start for the Colts week 1 of 2026. I'm very excited for him to be the next face of that franchise. They move on from Anthony Richardson this year. They make it happen. He'll be in Indy before the end of the year. Outside of Indy, where do you think are realistic expectations? We thought the Raiders, and then they go in.
Well, it's possible. The Raiders, obviously. Then the Panthers, and the Panthers end up signing Hendon Hooker, so that probably that takes them out of that would be a logical spot.
Right.
I don't really know.
What is the
Jacksonville
Jags?
eventually? Yeah, but they got John Wolford there.
They already took the Wolfman from us.
Yeah, I don't really know, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's odd, but definitely
the options with Bucs connections for Trask are pretty much done because it's those three teams pretty much, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, those seem to make the most sense. But I mean, any opportunity in the NFL is a good one. And to be honest with you, I'd rather be making backup QB money than anything else. You don't.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Ideally, there's a lot of guys who have very long careers. Just ask Josh Johnson, who at this point may be the longest tenured NFL player in the league, active still, headed into his 17th season in Washington, I believe. Tampa Bay Buccaneers legend at backup QB. I mean, he's probably, I don't know, man. Who knows how much longer he's going to play. Let's get into some more offensive groups here. We'll talk about the running back room. You got an interesting update. The Buccaneers deciding to carry 4 running backs into week 1. I believe they only carried 3 into week 1 last season. Mm-hmm. Bucky Irving, Rashad White, Sean Tucker, and Josh Williams out of LSU, if I'm not mistaken. Had, a couple of really good highlights this preseason. I think had a good camp and kind of, honestly, one of those names that popped up later on in the camp and preseason cycle. I thought we didn't hear a ton about him, but he makes the roster, and that's really cool to see.
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about it, I think, on the show a couple weeks ago. Baker Mayfield literally singled him out, not asked specifically about him, just mentioned him out of the blue that he was pretty good, and then he gets banged up a little bit and wasn't able to play in that first preseason game, and Owen Wright really took the reins, and it sort of became the Owen Wright show, and I think a lot of people kind of forgot about Josh Williams, and he didn't make any big splash plays, but what I saw out of him I liked, and for a fourth running back, why not? I also think he has a little bit of kick return ability to him, which I think helped his case to make the roster. So clearly somebody that the Bucs are pretty high on, and they want to give a legit shot. And like you said, they carried 3 running backs last year, so for them to carry 4 this year, it must have meant that Williams made a pretty strong impression on him.
Absolutely. You mentioned Owen Wright. He was cut, and then Jace McClellan, the other name that was cut. Were either of those guys brought back on the practice squad off the top of your head?
I don't believe so. Let me check right now, though.
I don't think so either. I don't remember seeing anything on it. I had to double check. I got to keep you on your toes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. I don't believe so. No, I don't think the Bucs have any running backs on their practice squad.
Let's move to a stacked wide receiver room, and one that kind of shifted a little bit over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, as far as these discussions go. Some injuries popped up here and there and changed the circumstances for these guys. We got Big 13, Mike Evans as always, Chris Godwin as well, Emeka Egbuka. Tez Johnson makes the 53-man roster. Sterling Shepard. Want to ask you a question about wide receiver 3 here in a minute. Ryan Miller also expected to make the roster, which is great news for him. And then Cameron Johnson, Jalen McMillan rounding things out. So let me get really quickly as we look at this wide receiver room here, and we talk about wide receiver 3 for week 1. I mean, week 1, are we looking at Sterling Shepard here, or are we looking at maybe a little bit more Tez Johnson?
I think you're going to be looking. Sterling Shepard's going to be the main guy. I think.
Had a good preseason.
I'm curious to see how they use Tez Johnson as an actual receiver during the season. Is it going to be as a receiver? Or is he going to be a gadget guy? I feel like if you just use him as a gadget guy, you might become a little too predictable. When he's on the field, they're going to be doing something a little wacky. So I think if you plan on doing that with him, you're also going to have to give him reps to actual receiver and have him run actual routes just to keep the defense honest. So I would think it's going to be Sterling Shepard, though. I mean, Tez had a good preseason for sure. I thought he returned kicks, returned some punts pretty good as well, which I think will help. I think he's going to be their primary punt returner. But I think as far as wide receiver, actually playing wide receiver, I think in Atlanta, you're going to be seeing Sterling Shepard a good bit.
Yeah, I'm just curious if they're going to mix up his usage at all over the first, 4, 5, 6 weeks of the season. You really get to see what this guy can do. I think he's a player who, if you're out there running a 4 wide receiver set, he can get lost out there. I don't know. There's something about him that's very intriguing, and I think a lot of people feel that way as well. Just excited to see him make the team. And again, with the injuries at wide receiver, at least to Chris Godwin, You look at that shifted workload for the start of the season. Emeka Egbuka expected a healthy amount in the early goings as well.
I mean, he's gonna be, yeah, like he's the wide receiver too. I mean, that's like, he's gonna have a bigger role than I think most people imagined. I don't know in the offseason after they picked him. I don't know if many people expected Chris Godwin to be ready for week 1. So I think you were always kind of assuming that he was going to play a role. But I don't know. Obviously, not many people expected Jalen McMillan to get hurt, and be out a significant amount of time. So I don't know if many people expected Emeka Egbuka to be wide receiver 2 for, I don't know, the first 3-4 games of the season. And who knows, maybe he earns a little bit more reps, if he does have success. Maybe even when Godwin comes back, that allows the Buccaneers to ease Godwin in even more. If you're like, well, Ibuka's been good. Like, we don't have to rush Godwin and have him play all these snaps. And, we can throw him in there when we want to get his feet wet and get going a little bit. Hasn't played football in almost a year. So I think that would benefit Godwin as well if Egbuka was good.
Dennis Houston, Jacob Harris, Raheem Jarrett, Trey Palmer, and Garrett Green are all the other names in that wide receiver room who were waived. Garrett Green brought back on the practice squad, and that's exciting to see because I know we throw the word gadget player around a lot, but he's a guy who changed positions and I think looked really athletic throughout camp, which you like to see. The former quarterback turned wide receiver made a couple of nice plays during the fan-hosted or open to the fans training camp. There were some cool videos of him coming out. Trey Palmer, waived by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, gets picked up by the New Orleans Saints. Who could have guessed, right? I mean, I personally thought that he was going to be a Panther, considering that
it made a lot of sense.
Yeah, considering they let go of Renfro and Thielen is on his way back to Minnesota. I don't know.
Canales and Idzik, who was the wide receivers coach,
right?
Sense.
Made some sense. Those guys had some success together, but it ends up he is going to New Orleans, so he wakes up just in a much worse situation, unfortunately. But man, what went wrong with Trey Palmer here?
Well, he wakes up getting pissed on,
right? Oh,
instead of pissed off.
I see. Hold on, which button? There it is. I hit the right button.
There it is. Yeah. I'm here all week. But I mean, look, it sucks. I personally probably would have kept him, but at the end of the day, it's a 4th, 5th string wide receiver. It's nothing, that I'm gonna freak out about. And he was hurt a lot of training camp, and that hurt his case. And he wasn't able to be out there. And when he did go in the preseason game, it wasn't like he lit the world on fire. And I think the Bucs at this point were just ready to move on. He didn't have a good year last year. I think a lot of fans were definitely expecting a little bit more from him after a solid rookie year. I mean, scored a like legit like splash play touchdown in the playoffs. In that wild card game, to kind of like clinch that game, basically, to like put it away, and just could never sort of recapture that same mojo that he had. Unfortunately, the team moves on. So I mean, it was a fine draft pick. I mean, it was good. 6th round pick, and I think the Bucs liked him. But with the depth that they have in the receiver room and the way Tej Johnson was playing and their trust in Sterling Shepard, I think all that and Ryan Miller just simply being available and playing better, I think all that sort of aided those guys over Trey Palmer.
I don't know if it happens in New Orleans, but I consider Trey Palmer the kind of guy who can bounce around the league. And ultimately, I think he'll stick somewhere. I think he'll find some success somewhere, and we'll hear his name maybe in a similar capacity as it was with Tampa Bay. It's not like he was ever a superstar, but he was certainly a playmaker here and there. So excited to see what the future holds for him, just not against the Bucs twice a year. Hopefully we don't see him on the field. All right, let's get into the tight end room here. We mentioned K-Dot at the start of the show. His status somewhat in jeopardy for week 1, something to keep an eye on. But the rest of this tight end room, Bucs carry 4 tight ends: Payne Durham, Devin Culp, and Ko Kieft. Ko Kieft making the roster. A lot of people have been counting out Ko Kieft, and he is seemingly sticking around as the Buccaneers' 4th tight end. Tanner Tala was waived, but he was brought back and will be on the Buccaneers practice squad. we can talk about Cade Otton. We know what we're getting with Cade Otton a little bit. Excited to see him contribute. I know he was a big factor when the Buccaneers lost most of their receiving core last year, so I think he's got a couple of plays up his sleeve this season. But the million-dollar question, the guy that we're all asking about outside of O'Keefe, is Devin Culp. Everybody is, very, very high on Devin Culp, and I think his athletic ability speaks for itself. But is this finally the time where, eventually we start to see him get going a little bit more in this offense? I want to see him out there more.
I think you could. I mean, especially like, Bowles said, like, well, Otten might be out a couple days. Like, we'll see. I think you could see Colt because, like, he's the behind, and like pure receiving. Colt might be the best like guy on the roster for that, like pure like receiving ability and splash play ability. He's just like the most athletic dude. Not to say Otten's bad at it. I just think Colt might be a little bit better. And Otten's obviously he's a better player. Like Otten is a better football player, but in terms of like splash play, like Colt might be better. Um, so like I mean he offers something different. He offers something that Payne Durham doesn't have, that O'Keefe doesn't have. And if Cade Otton, is not going to be ready for week one, I don't know if I don't think Devin Culp is going to be their tight end one. That's probably going to be Payne Durham. But like I think you'll see Culp maybe get a couple targets here and there. As something that also these opponents haven't really seen, right? They haven't seen much of Devin Culp. He only played in a handful of games last year, and that was late. He didn't even play much in those games, so they haven't seen a ton of him. And look, I mean, we're talking about what was he, a seventh round seventh round tight end? Like
Right.
I understand what we're talking about here. The upside is limited. But I think, in a pinch, he can give you, a 20, 25-yard gain. Maybe he can, catch a 5-yard pass, break a tackle, and turn it upfield for 10 extra yards, 15 extra yards. I'm not sure the Bucs have anybody in their tight end room that can do that right now besides him. So he brings a different trait, and I think that's a good thing. So we'll see if he gets some more playing time. And he might with, Otten being maybe a little banged up.
Yeah, and I think it's encouraging, too, that Culp's a guy who at the tail end of last year already has some athletic plays under his belt in big-time NFL season action. Let's move on to the offensive line here. Tristan Wirfs, the big one at left tackle. We know Luke Gedeke at right tackle, Graham Barton at center, Cody Malk at guard, Ben Bredesen the other guard, Elijah Klein, Charlie Heck, Ben Chukwuma, the rookie, and Lorenz Metz rounding things out. Charlie Heck, a lot of people are going to be talking about that. We know Elijah Klein as well, a name who is kind of stuck around and the Bucs are pretty high on. But Ben Chukwuma is I think exciting to see when you consider just the other backup offensive linemen that were battling for similar positions here. I'm not necessarily excited to see the depth, but I hope that these guys are more than serviceable here as the Bucs have picked their group.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to see any of these guys, that we just mentioned at the bottom of the list here on the field.
Right.
All due respect to those guys, if that's the case, there's some injuries happening, right? But yeah, good on Ben Chukwuma. I mean, obviously an incredible story. Didn't even start playing football until I think he was like 17 or 18 years old, something like that. Like he didn't start playing until very late in the process. I think he's like Nigerian or something like that. So yeah, very, very cool story. Very cool that he was able to make the initial 53, and we'll see if he's able to stick. Obviously, the Bucs are, even though again Tristan Wirfs, passes physical, week one's still very much up in the air, and I'm encouraged. I think Tristan Wirfs is going to be back before Chris Godwin. So like I don't think we're gonna be like if we're waiting to week 4, week 5 for Chris Godwin, I don't think you're gonna be waiting that long for Tristan Wirfs. I think it could be like maybe he misses week 1 and that's it. Like I think he's closer than Godwin is. So we'll see. But obviously, you're gonna have Charlie Heck there starting left tackle. And it would be interesting to see if Otten can't go. We were kind of assuming that Otten was going to be sort of the helper over there, right? Chipping occasionally, doing some things to help out over there. If Otten can't go, I'd be curious to see how they sort of game plan that. Does Payne Durham just kind of take that role? We'll see, because Otten was a pretty big piece of that when Luke Gedeke went down last year. He was able to help Justin School out a good bit. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But yeah, I mean, Ben Chukwuma is a cool story, and hopefully he doesn't have to play much. I don't think you want to throw him to the wolves right now, but yeah, it's a pretty cool story. And the offensive line overall, Elijah Klein's a guy they're trying to develop right now. They have him listed, I think, as the backup center, which, whatever. They like their guys to play center or guard, be versatile like that. But yeah, hopefully when it comes to the offensive line, you're just hoping for continuity and you're hoping for, health. So it's a pretty physical position. I mean, you're getting hit every single time. You're engaging with another person every single time. So you just hope those guys can stay healthy because you have a few injuries there, and that can derail an entire season if you have a couple injuries on the offensive line. No matter how good your quarterback or your skill position groups are, if you can't block nobody, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can't stop them, you're not going to move the ball.
Yeah.
Couple of tough breaks here. Jake Majors, it's a guy, honestly, we were kind of high on. I was excited to see him make the cut and have a decent training camp program. And then I think it was, some kind of wrist injury, ultimately leads to him losing that shot there. And then Sua Opeta, the Buccaneers decide to move on. As you remember, they brought him in for depth to kind of compete for that guard spot with Ben Bredesen a couple of years ago now. And then he misses the entire season with an ACL injury. So he comes back, goes through the process, and the Buccaneers do not bring him back. Moving on to our defensive linemen here. Your big interior guys, Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey, Logan Hall, Greg Gaines, and Elijah Roberts, who, might I add, in this rookie class, to be honest with you, until the David Walker injury happened, I think Elijah Roberts was largely forgotten about. You know what I mean? He wasn't as, he wasn't as sexy of a pick as like a Tez Johnson, even though Tez was later. Sure. Like there was just much more hype in other places. I mean, there was more hype for Shilo Sanders and Desmond Watson as undrafted free agents than there probably was for Roberts. But Elijah Roberts ranked first in pass rush for win rate this 2025 preseason amongst all defensive players at 30% playing a minimum of 30 snaps. His 91.1 pass rush grade ranked second amongst all defenders this preseason. He can get after the quarterback, and he's figuring it out in the run game too. That statistic courtesy of Daniel Salib on Twitter. But that's promising, right? I know it's preseason. Again, we don't want to put all of our eggs into one basket here, but getting that kind of pressure from the interior is pretty exciting to see, especially when this is, all things considered, your replacement for Will Golston, who did not return.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yeah, definitely encouraging. And obviously, in preseason, he's not playing against, other teams starting guards or starting interiors like that. So there will be an adjustment, but I'm curious to see how much he plays because again, the Bucs sort of have their three guys, Vita Vea, Kalijah Cansey, Logan Hall kind of set up on that interior. They don't really like, it's not like this and that, like, they pretty much have, like an idea of what their three is going to be. So it's going to be a rotation behind those guys. And Roberts is going to be in that rotation, firmly in that rotation. And I'm curious to see how much he plays. And hopefully, he can make a splash play or two. I think he's definitely a guy who can make a difference, right? Is he going to be a starter for you? No, I don't think at any point this year, barring any injuries, I don't think at any point he's going to be starting games for the Buccaneers. But I do think he can come in on a third down or two. And, maybe he doesn't get the sack. Maybe he has a pressure, or maybe he gets there's a goal line play and he breaks breaks a tackle of a guard and brings the guy down. Something like that. I could see that happening. And I think when they drafted him, he was like something like his PFF grade was. It was like the third highest or something like that of like FBS players, something like that.
Yeah.
Like the third highest like defender or something like it was pretty high. And yeah, you are right. It's sort of I think David Walker going down sort of helped magnify him a little bit, but I think a lot of people were focused on David Walker and not Elijah Roberts, and they were focused on Tez Johnson and not Elijah Roberts. And I think now it's sort of turning a little bit to where I think there are fans that are excited to see him.
Yeah. Some of the guys cut, CJ Brewer, Adam Gotsis, both of them back on the practice squad. Man, oh man, Big Des Watson. This is an interesting case, and I want to know where your head's at with it, because Todd Bowles kind of said today that the door is still open, but he immediately followed up and said, if you don't practice, you're not going to play here. So, Big Dez has not been able to practice. He has seemingly been trying to get his weight down, and whether he can't or he just isn't meeting progress. Like, I don't entirely know what's going on with this situation, because is it simply a matter of this guy has to get his weight down and he can't, and he's just not doing it? Like, he keeps, getting pizzas at 7-Eleven at 2 a.m. or something. Because I get it. I've been there, but when you're an NFL player, almost with an NFL training staff around you, I would think that, I think a lot of people are getting impatient with this process, and I know it's a lot easier said than done. I know a lot of people who are giving this kid a super hard time are people who are not in the NFL themselves. But what is going on here? Do you feel like it's I don't know. It feels very murky, feels very weird. But Todd Bowles seems like he wants to keep the door open and try and help this kid out.
I mean, I don't know what else they can do. He's, the Bucs practice squad's full. They could have put him on the NFI list, which is non-football injury list, and it wouldn't have counted towards a roster spot, and it would have allowed him to continue, practicing and stuff like that, and he didn't do it. But also, I think there was a clear plan. When they signed him at OTAs, they had and we don't know what that goal is, but
Right.
I'm sure it was a realistic weight goal. I'm sure they're not going to say, hey, Desmond, next time you come here, we need you to drop 150 pounds. I'm sure they're not telling him that. But he didn't reach it.
Yeah.
And clearly, and I'm sure they kept scaling him. Throughout training camp, I'm sure it wasn't just once and they said, "Oh yeah, you're not ever gonna play or practice."
Right.
I'm sure they kept trying.
Get used to walking your laps, buddy.
Yeah,
I mean, that's all we saw him do. He just walking around with
Yeah.
his towel, and you do got to feel for the guy. But I'm interested.
At the same time, though, like you said, you are an NFL player.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like me and you, trying to lose weight. That's harder for us, right? Those guys have nutritionists. They have the best nutrition in the world. They have guys that can build meal plans around what you like and don't like, and nutrition shakes and what the best things to put in your body and everything. And the workout equipment, the access that you have
Yeah.
have unlimited access to all this stuff. I understand, right, that it is hard, but it's also not impossible. And it seemed like the Bucs gave him 3 months to do it, and he came back and no progress was made. So I feel for him to an extent. At the same time, you were given an assignment as your job and you didn't do it. I don't know.
And I'm not going to go off on a tangent here, but I do have to mention. I mentioned it earlier with the Trask talk. I am a Gator fan. Grew up a Gator fan. I'm a little bit of a USF fan by proxy, just because I've always lived within 2 miles of the campus. But I have grown up a Gator fan. I've grown up seeing Tim Tebow at the heights of this program. And I've watched Kyle Trask when many people thought he was a Heisman candidate, even though it was funny at the time. It still is funny now. He had a very solid season. He was probably, I don't think since then, the Gators have had a nearly as productive quarterback. Anthony Richardson was okay, but I think most people agreed he wasn't ready for the NFL when he decided he was going to go.
Well, and I also
draft.
think that's part of it with Desmond Watson. I think if he was if he was from Washington State, I don't know if people care as much.
This is for me, the whole point that I'm getting to. This is a whole super long-winded way to just put the blame on Billy Napier as a head coach, because I'm not on the Billy train, man. I think the guy is I don't think he's a leader of men. Let me put it to you that way. But that's all.
Okay.
I think there are some things that are brought into question when, again, I remember when they brought this guy in his freshman year, he was massive and everybody was like, yeah, we're excited, but at the same time, they were also like, imagine what he's going to look like 4 years from now. And then he looks the exact same. And then it's like, well, do they not care what kind of condition their guys are in? I don't know. That's a conversation for a different show. But you get what I am getting at here. We are certainly still polling for Big Dez. I think it would be really cool to see him ultimately suit up, but you gotta stick to it, man. It's just one of those things. It is a full-time job at this stage of the game. Let's continue our conversation on the defense here. Talk about the edge rushers. This one's interesting. Hassan Reddick, Yaya Diaby, Anthony Nelson, Chris Braswell, and Marquise Watts. We know that David Walker is going to be missing this entire season due to injury. The Buccaneers have waived Jose Ramirez, who has become, again, one of those August names that pops up every now and again when we look at this edge rusher room. Jose Ramirez, who has, I think, had some regular season action as well during his time with the Buccaneers, but they move on from him and Warren Peoples as well. So your outside linebacker room is set, my friend, and I got to tell you this. I know it's been said. It's not necessarily a secret at this point, but if Hassan Reddick doesn't perform and Yaya Diaby doesn't develop and Chris Braswell is just another dude, which at this point, jury's still out. I'm
Not
very
looking great.
Very curious about where this pass rush is going to end up. We are putting a lot of stock in Hassan Reddick, and I think he can do it. I think he is capable of it. Big contract year for him, so he's going to be hungry, but he's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay productive. Outside of that, you got a couple of dogs on the interior that we'll talk about in a minute, but
They're obviously they're putting a lot of their eggs in the Hassan Reddick basket, but also for the second straight season, they're putting a lot of eggs in the Yaya Diaby basket.
And I just one more little bullet point asterisk here. I think the David Walker situation makes this so much more dire than it was this time 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm. That's another guy who you could have thrown in there as a rotational guy.
Contributor.
Last year, when they put all their eggs, well, I shouldn't say all their eggs, but most of them in the Yaya Diaby basket, it wasn't like Diaby wasn't terrible, but it just, to rely on that guy to be your main guy, it didn't work. And if Hassan Reddick doesn't bounce back, they're in trouble. Like I just don't. And again, I don't think Diaby's a bad player. I don't think he's gonna have a bad season. But I think, and I've explained this. I think I was talking to James actually. I don't know, 3 weeks ago or so, a month ago. And I was like, the best way to put it is like, if you look at that Super Bowl team and you look at Shaq Barrett, Jason Pierre-Paul, like Diaby's probably the 3, maybe the 4. Like I think on a really, really like elite team and like defense, like Diaby's probably best served as a 3. And like right now, like he's a 2. And if Reddick's bad, he's gonna be their 1. Like last year, Diaby was basically their 1. That's the biggest issue, I think. Diaby is, I think, a third, as best served as a third pass rusher. That's fine, right? In today's NFL, you need that, right? Just like you need more than 2 wide receivers, you need more than 2 pass rushers. But if you're wanting him to be your number 1 guy, I think you're gonna be disappointed. And I am still very concerned. I was concerned at the start of the offseason. I'm still concerned now. Like, yeah, I think if Reddick's better, obviously it's going to be better. And do I think it could be slightly better? Yes. Because I think Hassan Reddick is a better football player than like Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Like I think he is. I think last year was weird for Reddick, right? I don't think that was actually him. But if he's not like 10 to 12 sack guy, like they're gonna be struggling, I think, to get sacks with just 4 guys again. And that's gonna lead to Todd Bowles having to blitz more, and it's gonna lead to putting the corners on an island more, and it's gonna lead to what you saw last year a lot. So yeah, I am still pretty concerned about the pass rush.
Diaby, one of the league's best at pressures last season. He's able to get around the quarterback. It's just finishing on those pressures because again, you can lead the league in pressures, but pressures aren't what stalls out a drive for an offense, right? You have a lot of good quarterbacks in this league who can make most of their best plays facing pressure. So it's one of those things where, just like you said, Reddick has to come together fully, which I'm confident he can. I don't know, man. Maybe that's going to be a mistake here in 6 weeks from now, but I am confident that that he can show up and play.
I think the silver lining is there. Well, kind of the silver lining. I think we're gonna have our answer on that pretty quickly. That's like I think we're gonna you're gonna, and like even like Atlanta. I mean, look, they're missing like Caleb McGarry's out for the year now.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, like the first, 2 3 weeks, you're gonna get your answer on I think what this pass rush is gonna be. And do I expect the Bucs pass rush to be elite? No, it doesn't need to be elite. No, it doesn't. Like they don't need Hassan Reddick to be 16 sack Hassan Reddick and Yadi Yabi to get 10 sacks. Like they don't need that. But they need to be better at rushing four and just getting pressure with four than they were last year. So we'll see.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Let's move on to the inside linebacker room. Levante David, of course, big number 54, returning for his 13th NFL season.
Believe so. And I mean, I don't have any source on this, but probably farewell tour if I had to guess.
Oh man, it's gonna be a very sad day.
I think it was pretty close last year.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree. Servassier Dennis, a guy who the Buccaneers are putting a lot of faith in, even potentially after Levante David decides to call it a career. Deion Jones and John Bullock round out the inside linebacker room. The Buccaneers waived Antonio Greer Jr., Anthony Walker, which was a surprise to some, and Nick Jackson, who they did extend an invitation to the practice squad. So Nick Jackson, who had a very exciting preseason, one of the stronger defensive players across the league, is on the practice squad for the Buccaneers. And then, of course, a really cool story with John Bullock making the final 53. But again, I don't want to be Debbie Downer 2 positions in a row, but with Levante David, we know what we're getting, which is among the best linebacker play in the NFL. But we also know that he's not as fast as he used to be, and he's not necessarily getting any faster at this stage of the game.
He's not 2016 Levante David.
No, he's definitely not. Fine, he's still more than serviceable, but I think outside of 2025 Levante David, if Servassier Dennis doesn't step up and, hopefully be the guy that the Buccaneers want him to be, this very quickly, just like that outside linebacker room, it's, I don't want to say it's a domino effect where it just leads to one guy can mess this whole thing up.
It's going to be the exact same thing as last year. It's going to be the same exact thing.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Where like there is a multiple games where the middle of the field is constantly wide open and they can't stop it. And like KJ Britt wasn't a terrible run defender. He just could not cover.
Yeah.
And I think Gervonta Dennis is a better coverage linebacker. But again, I think they're putting a lot of eggs in that basket. I didn't mind signing a veteran, Anthony Walker Jr. They end up cutting him. I thought it was interesting that they kept Deion Jones because I didn't think it was a great sign that Deion Jones was playing in the fourth quarter of the third preseason game.
Well, and let me get just
your... And also, really quick, year 14 for Levante David, by the way, not 13.
Thank you.
We
Thank
shortchanged
you.
him a
Thank
little
you.
bit.
It came out with a question mark because I had a feeling it wasn't correct. Year 14, the ageless wonder, Levante David at linebacker. But yeah, let me kind of get your gut check reaction here because I didn't hate the Walker signing, and all reports say that he is healthy and ready to play. Maybe that's just the agent kind of putting that out there because of the situation that he's in. That's what happens, on cutdown days like this when stuff is expected and guys are looking for new teams. But the decision to roster Deion Jones over Walker at this point. I know that Deion Jones has a little more time under his belt now in Tampa Bay. But yeah, like you said, with his appearance in the preseason and how late into that game he was playing, that's typically not the best sign for a guy who is hopeful to make the final 53. So I'm curious where you think what do you think of this development, Evan?
It was a surprise. I mean, and also there was a report that he's working out, with the Colts or whatever. Because I thought, when they originally released Anthony Walker, I was like, okay, well, maybe it's like a Sterling Shepard thing. If you remember correctly, Sterling Shepard got cut last year by the Bucs. At the final cutdown day, they signed him to the practice squad. I think he ended up playing week. I think he was elevated almost immediately.
I definitely think he played that game against the Lions.
He played against. I know he played against the Eagles too, and that was week 4. So yeah, he was definitely there. But I figured it'd be something like that, and then obviously their practice squad's full, and Anthony Walker's working out for other teams. So I guess, I think the Bucs wanted him back. I do wonder if Anthony Walker was probably nah,
right.
which maybe they weren't on the same page when it came to his health and how to go about things and how to get him back on the field. Maybe they couldn't agree on that, and he was just like, no, like, oh, I'm good.
Yeah.
Which is like, hey, whatever. But it is surprising, and it does kind of hurt their depth a little bit there. But yeah, really concerned, to put a cap on it and try as we round out the roster here. Pretty concerned about the linebacker room as well, because I just feel like you said, if Servassier Dennis, despite Levante David being Levante David, we saw last year that he's not Superman. Like, if he doesn't have the running partner next to him, like, it's not going to matter. And if Servassier Dennis isn't good, which I think the Bucs are sort of counting on him being, I think it's going to be a repeat of what it was last year.
Let's get into the secondary here. The cornerback room: Jamel Dean, Zion McCollum, Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish, Kendall Vildor, Josh Hayes. The Buccaneers will carry 6 corners, 2 of them rookies. Benjamin Morrison really yet to do anything. I'm a little concerned. I know we talk about how not many people are in question for week 1, and Benjamin Morrison, I don't think, was expected to have a huge role in week 1 regardless, but I'd like to see him ready to go. Outside of that, though, Jacob Parrish expected to be a contributor if Morrison is healthy. I expect him to be a contributor at some point this season. And Kendall Vildor had a strong preseason as well. He makes the roster here. Josh Hayes rounding it out. Your thoughts?
Well, I think they don't seem too concerned about Morrison. So we'll have to wait and see. Like, they don't seem overly concerned.
We just didn't see
Hamstrings
any
are
of
obviously,
them.
yeah. I mean, look. I mean, he's got a hamstring right now, and just like with wide receivers, hamstrings are tricky for anybody. So, whether you're a wide receiver, in this case, obviously a corner, it's sort of a day-to-day thing, and you can tweak it again pretty easily. So I again, they just don't seem very concerned. So we still have over a week, like we still have what 11 days, until opening day. So still got some time, but hopefully you can get out there. Parrish obviously had a pretty solid preseason. I thought Vildor played pretty well in the preseason, made a couple of splash plays.
Yeah.
Josh Hayes, I mean, I would just, they signed Bryce Hall to the practice squad. They were able to get him back, but I wouldn't have risked that. I just probably would have tried to do that with Josh Hayes instead. But, happy to get Bryce Hall back. But
Yeah.
yeah, Josh Hayes stays mostly for his special teams, I think. That's where they like him the most. But yeah, it's a fine room. I mean, obviously, look, they need Jamel Dean to bounce back from a bad year last year. I've said it multiple times. I don't think Jamel Dean is a bad player. I think Jamel Dean had a bad year, but I don't think he's a bad player. But they need him to bounce back, and they need Zion McCollum to take another step. He was pretty good in the first half of the season. Second half of the season, McCollum kind of slowed down a little bit. So they're going to need him to put together a full season of solid work, and he's going to be motivated because he's a free agent after this season. So I believe Drew Rosenhaus is his agent too. So there's a chance that, look, I mean, corners, man, they get paid. Like, even like the average to slightly above average ones, they get paid. So if McCollum like goes out there and plays even slightly well, he's gonna get a nice little chunk of change in the offseason, whether it's from the Bucs or somebody else. So he's gonna be playing for something. And yeah, then I think you're gonna be looking at Parrish being their starting nickel. And they found a good rhythm with Tyke Smith, their starting nickel last year. Hopefully they can find that with Parrish again this year.
I know we're going to talk about it with the safety room here in a second. I'll ask you that question in a second. But yeah, Jacob Parrish slated to be that starting nickel. I'm excited to see him. And I don't just say this. I know I'm not the only person who has said it. He reminds you a little bit of Rondé Barber, man. He is a small, physical guy. He does not follow the typical archetype of, how the Buccaneers like their corners. They like their guys to be a little bit bigger. And Parrish is not that. And he is the first, genuine cornerback that the Buccaneers have had play corner in this defense for at least the last 2 seasons, because they've had safeties doing it for the last couple of years. So I think that is potentially going to benefit the Buccaneers a lot this upcoming season. He had a lot of hands on the football throughout training camp, throughout the preseason. And I'm just excited to see him work, man. But on the other hand of it, the guy who played nickel for the Buccaneers last year in this defense is who I want to ask you about in this safety room. First, your safeties: Antoine Winfield Jr., Tyke Smith, Christian Izzy, and Kayvon Merriweather and Rashad Wisdom. Tyke Smith got bumped to safety. What did you think of his preseason?
Look, I mean, overall, just before, so we didn't play a whole lot, right?
Yeah.
Like, the starters on defense in general, what they play 2 series against Pittsburgh, I think.
Yeah,
Like
one and a
they didn't
half.
play. Yeah, Winfield didn't play at all in the preseason, so he didn't have his running mate. Got beat. Dean got beat on that deep ball, and Tyke kind of got flat footed on that one in Pittsburgh. So it was up and down, but it's fine. Like I'm not gonna react too much to a couple drives, but I'm curious to see how he plays because
Yeah.
I thought his role as being a nickel worked pretty darn well last year, and that was sort of a similar role he had at Georgia. Like he played a little bit of safety at Georgia, but he was also played some nickel, and they decided to move him. So we'll see how it works out, and hopefully it does. They've been looking for they were looking for a running partner for Winfield since Whitehead left, and they tried to replace him with Whitehead, and it just didn't really work out. Injuries kind of plagued Whitehead, and now they're hoping that Tyke Smith can be the long-term solution to that. So that'd be a nice little pairing there if Tyke Smith can work out.
Yeah, I think so too. And listen, Tyke Smith's still a dog, man. You had mentioned him in that nickel position last year for the Bucs. There was a period of time where he was like the only person who could get hands on the football on the defensive side for
Yeah.
Tampa Bay. So, he has playmaking ability. He's still a very young player as well. I think when we talk about guys, in really just in general in the NFL, people lose sight of how long they may or may not have been doing exactly what they're doing. And for Tyke Smith, this 2025 season, it's going to be a little bit different for him. And he is still a young player entering his second season. So curious to see if he can, really get a hold of things. I think 7, 8, 9 games in, that's going to be that critical point where you just want to pay close attention to see if he's really catching on to things. And I have faith that he can. But yeah, just curious to see him develop. Christian Izien, we know, has made plays before as well. Kayvon Merriweather and Rashad Wisdom rounding out that room. J.J. Roberts, man, the undrafted free agent. We know he's going to miss the season.
I mean, he was going to make the team.
He was 100% going to make the team and had a very, very productive camp. The common theme of the preseason really was guys getting their hands on the football, and J.J. Roberts did a huge chunk of that early on in the training camp window. They waive Shilo Sanders, and he goes unclaimed on waivers.
Shocker.
Evan, I know you're devastated, man.
I know it's terrible. I mean,
do they have like a policy on return policy for your jersey?
Ooh, I gotta check into that.
Because
I ordered 10 of them. So.
Well, it was a little over 3 weeks ago. It was, I think you're like 25, 26 days, and I don't know if it's a 30-day thing or 60, 90.
Man. I gotta check in on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you might have a hard time flipping those now.
Yeah. Well, if anybody is interested in a Shilo Sanders jersey, but look, I mean, I have nothing against Dion and Shador and Shiloh and all that stuff. Like I don't think like these guys are terrible. And I'm also not one of those people that are like the NFL's against them. This is rigged, dude. Shilo Sanders isn't that good. Like I'm sorry. Like he didn't play that well. He played okay in the first preseason game, and the more you saw him, the worse it got. Like it just was not NFL caliber football. Like that guy, if he's gonna play football, it's gonna be in like the CFL. Like that's where if he wants to, there is no other. Like where else is he gonna go?
There's the
there
UFL.
is no other like. I guess. I mean,
Tampa Bay Bandits might be on their way back. I don't know if you saw that.
He can stay. He can stay. Let me know when Bandit Ball comes back. Then I'll start paying attention. Saddle up. But I think he could be a fit for that. It's just, I mean, I have people still like complaining to me that he was cut. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Like he didn't play well. Like and the punch also had nothing to do with it. Whatever,
yeah.
But that's not the reason.
That was the thing. That was the thing that I was gonna get around to if you didn't mention it. There is that unfortunately, kind of like you had said, outside of that ejection, it didn't look like he was trending to be.
That's the only headline he made besides being Shilo Sanders. That's the only headline he made.
Right. A lot of the other social media stuff, it's fun to get excited about. It's fun to buy into it, and again. It would have been a fun experience, but when push comes to shove, you got to play, man. And unfortunately, Shilo Sanders does not make the cut. So the Shilo Sanders era in Tampa Bay, albeit brief, It certainly got us a lot of social media views, I guess, when you look at the Buccaneers numbers and Shiloh's YouTube channel and stuff like that. You know what? It kind of, it lasted even longer than. Here's a name for you. I've been dropping this before our last position group here. We'll wrap it up with the specialist. But speaking of specialist, do you remember John Franklin?
Yeah. John Franklin.
Do you
you
remember
had Florida State, you had Last Chance U.
Yeah. Do you
had a lot of stuff.
remember? It was the very end of the 2019 season. I'm pretty sure, that final game against the Falcons in Tampa.
Didn't they run an end around with them?
And they had Brashad Perryman. It was a direct snap. I looked it up today because I talked with my buddy at work, Garrett, and I talked with Rondé about this, and neither of them remembered John Franklin. And they were like, "Are you sure this was a real guy?" And I had to prove that I was not crazy and that John Franklin mania was indeed running wild in Tampa Bay at the tail end of 2019. He tore his ACL at the start of camp in 2020, missed that entire 2020 season, got a Super Bowl ring from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then if you remember,
he was involved in the AB stuff.
He was involved in the AB stuff. He was
the fake vaccination.
He was like the dealer.
It was him.
He was the dealer.
It was him, Mike Edwards, and John Franklin.
Yeah, Mike Edwards, who was also released today, and I don't think claimed on waiver. So
he signed back to the Chiefs practice.
Okay, he did. Thank you for the update on that. But yeah, John Franklin, man, that was like the most exciting direct snap I remember watching because my immediate reaction, it was an 11-yard gain, direct snap to John Franklin, and in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my God, we got Taysom Hill. Oh my God, we got because that was back
the former quarterback turned receiver.
Yeah, that was back when the Saints would curb stomp us twice a year, and Taysom Hill would always score in those games. But yeah, it's Ed. Great point, man. The streets won't forget John Franklin. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, man. That was a time to be alive. Let's wrap it up here with the specialist position. Money Mac, Chase McLaughlin, Riley Dixon at punter, and Evan Deckers, your long snapper. Riley Dixon at punter, I think, going to be a refreshing change. Again, I don't want to get too hopeful here because we have seen things certainly go sideways with this position in particular the last couple of seasons. I don't think we've had a consistent punter since the people's champ himself, Bradley Pinion, but I'm excited to see Riley Dixon in red and pewter. He looked pretty good in the preseason.
Yeah. I mean, look, they paid him, right? So this is clearly a guy they're not like taking a flyer on or anything.
Right.
Like they see something and they wanted him and they got him. So they went out and targeted a veteran punter. It wasn't like, and I'm glad they did. I'm glad they didn't just try and, let's try and find an undrafted free agent and try and see what he's got. Like, no, like I'm glad that they went this route. And hopefully it turns out pretty good. I mean, the last few times they've done it, it's been pretty good. I mean, you had Bradley Pinion before that, like Brian Anger was, arguably better than Bradley Pinion.
Anger was here. It felt like forever too.
Yeah, I mean, he was there a long time, but like he was a veteran as well. So like that sort of worked out for them. And yes, I know they invested a high draft for a punter. They invested a high draft pick in Jake Camarda, and Camarda was good for his rookie season and then tailed off. But I'm glad they didn't try and get cute and try and go we can just find a diamond in the rough. Like I'm glad they tried, like not just put like a the water's leaking, let's just put a Band-Aid on it. Like, no, like I'm glad they decided to fix it. And hopefully it is fixed.
Yeah, we've seen enough. And I can't believe I'm saying that I'm excited to see a punter. I don't know how really excited I am to see him because, most of the time you see him on the field. The Buccaneers
you see the punter, it's bad news.
Right. It's typically a disappointing 3 and out. So we'd like to not see him a ton, but whenever we do see him, I'm excited to see if he can help our defense out any way that he possibly can. But yeah, Richard T, one last point here. Jake Camarda, dude, what happened? Still not on an NFL team.
He was on.
Was it the Bills?
It might have been the Bills earlier, earlier in camp, and he got cut. Yeah. So he was given a shot and then not really given a shot. So
yeah, tough to see, man. Tough to see a fall from grace. Jake Camarda made a couple of cool plays too. I remember like that impromptu.
Potentially save their season.
Yeah, no kidding. We talk about like that being, the play of the
season.
You
want to talk about an obscure play?
Yeah, trivia question.
Yeah,
I still think John Franklin's 11-yard direct snap has got you beat because
Yeah, maybe.
Sean Frank. If you want to know someone who's been
I don't
watching,
know. Are you sure, or is it Mike James doing a goal line pass to Tom Crabtree against the Seahawks in 2013?
I think
Which one is that? Is it that one? Or
I think
I'm just saying.
I I don't know what I think anymore. We don't think on this
Leonard
show.
Johnson having a pick six off Phillip Rivers. There's a couple.
Leonard Johnson, dude, what a name.
Yeah, I was at that game. That was my first ever Bucs game in Tampa.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome, dude. That's awesome. All right, my friends. I think that's all we got left in the tank for tonight's episode of the Can of Fire podcast. Covered all the ground.
Once we start talking
about
about Mike James, it's just
yeah.
all due respect to Mr. James. I mean, come on.
I'm excited, man. We have got our next podcast for
Also,
you.
really quick,
Yeah.
MK, you're impossible to forget, my friend. So yeah, we certainly do.
Yeah, we gave you a shout at the start of the show, my man.
He said, "Don't drink too much. I'll call me first and join."
Yeah.
That's great.
I gotta make it. I gotta make it to a game with MK.
Oh
soon.
my
We've
god,
gone
I gotta do anything with Mikey.
We've gone to preseason action before, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Bucs Bengals, and I didn't really get tore up from the floor up like I would have liked to for a preseason game. But next time me and MK got together, me and Mikey Kelly, man, we gotta make that happen. All right. Put a lid on it, man. Thank you to everybody for hanging out with us and watching the Cannon Fire podcast live on YouTube tonight. Shout out to all of our live viewers. Richard T on the West Coast. It's Ed, Dark Angel, MK. Of course, you can't forget Eddie Nash chiming in. Austin Mills. I'm not going to say that on the air, MK. That's incriminating. But I'm glad that we shared that memory, man. That was a great time. David Bartleson as well checking in. Buckin, who is in here early on.
I really like how we both read that at the exact same time.
Wayne Lee Ayers. Just a person. Anybody else that I may have missed, we appreciate you stopping in. Subscribe to the channel for more great Buccaneers news and content as we get ready for the ball to get rolling here at the start of the regular season. The next podcast that we do for you folks is going to be our season predictions show. It's normally a pretty big episode for us, so we are excited to officially kick off the regular season. We're going to break down every single game and tell you whether we think the Bucs are going to win or lose. Plenty of fun conversation. That game that game. Good Lord. That episode is going to be early next week, to be completely honest with you, because I'm going out of town this weekend. A little impromptu trip. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram, Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. Check out his written work at BucsNation.com. What have you got cooking for the people, Evan? They're hungry.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm in the stove. I'm in the kitchen, right? I'm not in the stove. That'd be bad.
Yeah, you would be cooked at that point.
Yeah, being in the stove wouldn't be great. But I'm in the kitchen, cooking on the stove, opening the fridge, getting everything ready. But look, next week's game week, right? So gonna have everything, on BucsNation.com to get you ready for that game leading up to it, and then afterwards recapping it for you guys. So stay tuned for that. Also, stay tuned on the Campfire Podcast YouTube channel as we did last year. This year, we're also going to be continuing with sort of our game week stuff as well throughout the week of, players to watch and betting the Bucs, and after the game, like best and worst kind of. So stay tuned for that. As Rhett mentioned way earlier in the show, the call-in shows, post game, will be back as well. So the game ends, head over to YouTube. We'll probably be live. So check us out there. And we appreciate you listening on all listening platforms. But if you want a little bit more video content, head over to the Campfire Podcast YouTube channel for all that good stuff.
I'm excited to hear from the people, man. It's been too long since we've had some fresh Buccaneer opinions right after the game. That's the best part of it, is that
those are always interesting.
Yeah, it is as emotional and as instant of a reaction as you can get. Sometimes those make the best ones. Now, 2-3 days later, I don't know, but in my opinion, that's an entertaining show, and that's why we do it, man. But I'm excited to get things rolling. Last but not least, you can find myself Instagram and Twitter at Rhettakus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. But that's the show. We will talk to you guys in the next one. Don't forget, 2025 season predictions show. Be there or be square, I think is what the cool kids say. I am your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish. We will see you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you for listening, and go Bucs.